Kia ora everybody and welcome back to Teology, where we drink tea and talk theology. Today, this is our final installment on our conversation of covenants. Well, for this time, I'm sure we'll talk about the covenants again. They're kind of a big deal. And today we are talking about a covenant that is prophesied in the Old and is confirmed in the New, and it is the foundation of the Christian faith. And the covenant we're first told about, I think we're first told about it in Jeremiah. Otherwise, it's like one of the most notable times that we're told about it. And it's in Jeremiah 34. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, know the Lord, because they will know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. So there is a lot going on there, and we are not going to unpack it very much at all. Maybe another time, but there's so much, and there is so much going on in that passage, and there are so many cool parallels with what Jesus does, and it's very interesting. But you can do a little bit of homework if you want to do that yourself or something. But what that demonstrates is that this idea of the new covenant is one that had been prophesied, that was in the Jewish idea of something that could be happening. This was a part of the awaiting for the Messiah, for God to come, awaiting this new covenant that was being promised. So those ideas, while not like linked, that is one of the hopes that the Israelites, that the Jewish people had, was the idea of there being a new covenant. And so there's a little thing that Jesus says that kind of draws on this idea, as he did with a lot of things. Then he took the cup, gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it with you and you in my Father's kingdom. The really crucial verse in the beginning of 28. This is my blood of the covenant. The blood of the covenant, that idea is linking back to the blood of the covenant that's talked about with Abraham and Moses, but also this is my blood of the covenant, which kind of makes you think about the new covenant. Jesus was saying a whole lot in like 5 words. My blood of the covenant is 5 words, and it holds so much theology and like that little part that we're not gonna get into all of it, but we'll get into some of it. The new covenant is intrinsically linked with the old covenant in the sense that Jesus, who is the new covenant coming, because it is his blood that is making the new covenant, it is his blood that binds the new covenant, and he is the fulfillment of the old covenants. And this new covenant extends and builds upon what the old covenants were doing. Is they're all about people being able to have a relationship with God, and God wanting to have a relationship and dwell with the people. And that's what all the old covenants were about, was God being able to do that. And that is what the new covenant is about, is God being able to do that. So the new covenant is the covenant that is made through Jesus, initially at the Last Supper, was established on the cross, and will now last forever. This covenant is replacing the old covenant, specifically the covenant of the law with Israel and Moses, as that is when it says, I'll make a new covenant with my people of Israel. That is what God is saying. I will make a new covenant. And the last covenant that he had made with the people of Israel was covenant with Moses. And is doing away with the law, and instead having the law written on our minds and on our hearts. Jesus came so as to bring this new covenant. The point of this covenant was to expand the good news to everybody so that everybody could be a part of this new covenant. The good news of the covenant, the good news of the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is God's rule and reign. For God to rule and reign, he needs to be in our midst, and the way he gets into being in our midst is through the new covenant that Jesus is making. He gets there, it is through what Jesus does, and one of the things he does is making this new covenant. Previously, the covenant was the good news for Israel. You are free. God has set you free from Egypt first, but again and again throughout the scriptures. And now he wants to dwell in your presence. Turn and follow his ways. But now the good news is for everyone. We have been grafted into Israel's story like a branch onto a well-established tree. We have been welcomed in by Jesus through his death. We have only been able to cross the threshold of sin and death by his blood, by his death, by the blood of the new covenant, by the blood of the covenant. The new covenant is the covenant that Jesus made with everybody, but that was coming out of Israel's story. And so we are grafted into that through what Jesus did as the Jewish Messiah. The covenant is laid out at the Last Supper, like how we see with Noah, Abraham, and Moses. That idea of the initial presenting of the covenant, the initial speaking, do this as a part of my covenant. This is what my covenant will contain. Are you going to agree to it? That is part of what happens at the Last Supper. This kind of creating of it and declaring of it occurs when Jesus says, take my cup of the new covenant, which I think is the phrasing that's used in Luke. The covenant is then confirmed and fully established, like with Noah, Abraham, and Moses a bit later, and we see this confirmation occurring on the cross. That is where we see it being confirmed. That is where his blood is poured out for all the sins and iniquities, like falling short of the world. And his blood is the blood of the new covenant. So when his blood is poured out over the world, it covers the sin and iniquities of the world, enabling the world to come into the new covenant. And enabling us, when we accept that, and when we can declare that, and believe it in our hearts, to be in this. The new covenant, taking his cup, the cup of the new covenant. This is his blood poured out to you. His blood is poured out on the cross. That is the establishment right there. That is when everything changed. It's there on the cross. Everything changed at Easter. It is the turning point for everything we understand. In so many ways, it is the turning point, and this is one of them. There's a lot with the new covenant that we could unpack. I think that is the important thing to understand, that the new covenant is what the whole New Testament is about, is the law being written on our hearts, and is about God being able to dwell in our midst, and that being able to be everybody, his grace being able to be extended to everybody. That is what it's about. Jesus died as a ransom for the many, not for the few. And while he did die for Israel, and we are grafted into that story, which is so important to remember, that we are grafted into their story, that this is their story. We have to be respectful of that. It is also the moment where everything changed, where God wanted to be with everybody. And so that brings us to the end of the Covenant series. If you're interested in watching the backlog up to this point, there is a playlist that's put together. I hope you've enjoyed the ride. It's been a little bit chaotic. And thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the new covenant. And I'll see you all with a new video soon. Bye!